that we've created, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But I want to throw a question at you, Jeffrey. It was mentioned that obviously we know of the case in New York. This is where you live.
Right.
And a state of emergency declared in that area. Tell me a little bit about how people responded to that in an area of the world where most people maybe don't even know that polio exists, let alone that it could be a threat.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the fact that we have been essentially without polio since 1979 in the United States has caused a lot of people to come to the conclusion that the disease does not exist any longer. But as most folks here know, as all folks here know, there was a case reported in Rockland County, New York, one of the most cosmopolitan counties outside of one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. It was in a single case of vaccine-derived polio in an unvaccinated, single unvaccinated young male. The problem with polio eradication, and to the extent that there is a downside, is that it has allowed there to be a certain growing complacency. It has allowed people to think polio is something of your grandparents' generation. Polio is something from black and white newsreels. Polio is something about mothers in the 30s and 40s taking their children away from swimming pools in the summer. The county in which the person who was struck by polio lives, at Rockland County, in his particular zip code, the vaccine uptake rate is 37%, which is a third of what we need for herd immunity. So I think we are in many ways victims of our own success. As Rotary often says, as recently as 1988, the disease was endemic in 125 countries around the world, paralyzing or killing 1,000 children a day. Now we're down to 2 endemic countries, but that does not mean the fight is over, because if there is one case of polio, there may as well be 1 million cases of polio. I often think of a time when my younger daughter was 7 years old, and I was looking online. I was doing some reporting on polio for Time magazine, and she saw a picture of a child in leg braces, and she was 7, and she said, "What's wrong with that boy?" And I said, "Well, he has polio." And she said what any 7-year-old would say. 7-year-olds are very me-directed people. And she asked me the question, could that happen to me? And I was able to say 4 of the most powerful words I've ever been able to say to one of my children, which is, "No, honey, it can't." And the reason is she was vaccinated. And I think we have to remember that this is not something that is guaranteed around the world. This is something that has to be worked for so that all parents can say, "No, honey, it can't."
Very powerful.